Good morning. Today we are going to talk about determination of the wage. Last time we talked about how the labor market works. We said that labor market has two main sides, the demand side and the supply side, and the demand side is represented graphically by the demand curve, which shows that there is a negative relationship between number of workers demanded and the price level, which is the wage rate. And with respect to supply, we said that from the point of view of the market as a whole, the supply curve is positively sloped, which shows that as wage rate increase, number of workers who would like to find a job is going to increase. This is the market supply curve, and we have differentiated between market supply curve and firm supply curve. With respect to the firm, the supply curve will be horizontal, as wage rates from the point of view of the firms is given. All firms are just like consumers who are price takers, firms are wage takers as well. Now we would like to merge supply and demand in order to find the wage rate that prevails in the market. Determination of wage rate. Wage rate that prevails in labor market depends on labor supply and labor demand, regardless of whether labor unions and or non-market factors are involved. So here we are going to neglect other factors, just demand and supply of labor. This is known as the market clearing wage. So the market clearing wage is the wage rate at which labor demand equals labor supply. Or in other words, there is no surplus, there is no shortage in this market. So the wage rate can be represented graphically as the point of intersection of demand and supply curves. This is the demand curve for labor, and this is the supply curve. Point of intersection is point of equilibrium at WE, or the market clearing wage. At any level upper or lower than the market clearing wage, we have either a shortage or a surplus in this market. So say for example at a lower level, say W1. At W1, in this case, demand for labor is greater than supply of labor. Demand is greater than supply, so there is a shortage in this market. And in this case, there is market adjustment from employers and demanders, and wage rate is going to increase. At a wage rate higher than the equilibrium wage rate, say for example W2, so supply of labor is greater than demand for labor, and there is a surplus in this market, and adjustment is needed from from workers and suppliers in order to decrease wage rate till we reach the equilibrium point once again, till we reach the market clearing wage rate. So WE is the going wage that individual employers and employees face. What about the case? This is the case of market. What about the case of a firm? As we said, that supply with respect from the point of view of the firm is horizontal. So these two graphs, one of them for the market and the other one for a firm. And this is number of workers or employment at this firm, say firm A. And this is total employment. And this is the wage rate. At the market, wage rate will be determined by point of intersection of demand and supply. This is the wage rate. And at the same wage rate, this is going to be the supply curve for this firm. And this is the demand, for example. So this is the level of employment at firm A given the wage rate or the supply curve. What about changes in the labor market, whether through change in supply or in demand? How this is going to affect the equilibrium point? This is the initial situation. And now let's assume that there is a shift in the demand for labor to the right. What's going to happen to the equilibrium wage rate? As demand for labor increases, demand curve will shift to the right. So we have new intersection point at a higher wage rate. What about the shift of the supply curve? This is the initial situation. Let's assume that supply of labor increase and shifts to the right. So the supply curve will shift to the right. We have new equilibrium point at a lower wage rate. So just like the demand and supply of any product, factors that affect the demand will cause a shift in the demand curve, and this will result in a change in the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity. And the same with respect to supply. In some cases, there is a change in labor and in labor demand and labor supply at the same time. So both of them is going to shift at the same time. This equilibrium and non-market influences. The labor market is subject to forces that embed the adjustment of both wages and employment to changes in supply or demand. What are these factors? Changing jobs often requires an employee to invest in new skills or bear cost of movement. So there is an additional cost in order to change the job. If you would like to change your job, you have to bear either cost of moving or you have to invest in yourself. Invest in yourself means to take courses or training. Also from the point of view, this is from the point of view of the employee. What about from the point of view of the employer or the hiring firm? Hiring workers can involve an initial investment in search and training. So if the firm would like to hire new workers, they have to invest in search and training. Of course, interviews is cost of search, and this is costly, okay? And then you have to train the new workers, and this is also costly. At the same time, firing workers or cutting their wages can be perceived as unfair, and this will affect productivity and morale. So if you are going to fire workers, it's perceived as unfair and affects morale and productivity of workers. Okay, what are the other barriers also that can affect the market? Government programs. Government programs or laws such as minimum wage rate. Sometimes the government would like to set the wage rate at a specific level. This is the minimum wage rate that can be perceived by any worker. Actually, minimum wage rate can result in an increase in unemployment rate. Why minimum wage rate causes an increase in unemployment rate? Say, for example, the firm assigned $10,000 as wages for number of workers, whatever the number of workers. If they can pay each one of them 1,000, so they can hire 10 workers. But if the government set the minimum wage rate to be 2,000 and the firm just would like to pay 10,000, so in this case the firm is going to hire just 5 workers. So this means that there are extra 5 workers who are unemployed workers. One more factor, which is customs or institutions such as labor union. Also, labor union or customs can affect choices of individuals and firms. Say, for example, I am going to hire just workers who are registered in a labor union or in an institution. Otherwise, they are not going to be hired in my firm. So this is going to affect my choice. Now we are going to move to another part, which is applications of the theory. Who is underpaid and who is overpaid? The concept of underpayment or overpayment have to do with the social issue of producing goods and services in the least costly way. So here we have to compare between the overpayment and underpayment with the market clearing wage. Let's start with above market wage. Workers who get a higher income than the market clearing wage are said to be overpaid workers. So in this case, employers are paying more than the necessary to produce their output. So this is the demand and this is supply, number of workers and wage rate. Actually, this is the market equilibrium wage or the market clearing wage, but we are going to pay for our workers WH. So they are overpaid workers. So in this case, more workers want jobs than they can find. So there is excess supply of labor. This is supply and this is demand. So as firms would like to pay workers higher than their wages, so more people would like to find these jobs. So in this case, wage reduction close to the level indicated by the market would be Pareto improving. Pareto improving means that we can make someone else better off. What about below market wages? Or underpaid workers? In case of underpaid workers, we are going to pay income to our workers less than the market clearing wage. This is demand and this is supply. Equilibrium point at quantity X, for example. This is the equilibrium wage rate or market clearing wage, and we are going to pay WL. So supply of labor in this case will be V, and demand for labor is Y. So there is excess demand. Actually, if workers are going to be paid WL, which is lower than the market clearing wage, it's difficult for employers to find and keep workers. And if they are going to stay in their jobs, they will be dissatisfied about their salary, and this may affect the production level or their productivity. And in this case, the employers have to increase wages in order to be close enough to the market wage rate or market clearing wages, in order to attract skilled labor to their jobs. Another application is economic rents. What's economic rents? Economic rents can be defined as the difference between the wage rate workers are actually paid on a job and the workers' reservation wage. What's meant by worker reservation wage? Reservation wage of a worker is the wage below which the worker would refuse the job. So it's like the minimum wage rate I'm going to accept. It's not the minimum by law, it's the minimum from my point of view. So it is the opportunity cost to the individual worker for giving up hours of leisure for market work. Say, for example, I have a job opportunity to work an hour for $10. And I know that this is the market clearing wage. And I haven't any other job opportunities. So I am going to be accept this job even if the wage rate is $5. So from my point of view, if I can find any job 5 or more, I'm going to accept this job. Otherwise, it's better for me to stay at home. Okay, so this is the reservation wage. And this is the market clearing wage. So if it is 5, I am going to work for a specific number of hours. If it is 7, I am going to accept to work more hours. If it's 10, I'm going to work more and more, and so on. So this is the supply curve in our case, for example, and this is W naught, W1, and W2, and this is the level of employment at wage W2, at wage W1, and at wage W naught. So say, for example, the reservation wage from my point of view is W naught is 5. I am going to work, if the wage is 5, 10 hours. Sorry, 2 hours. If the wage increase from 5 to 7, I can work for 5 hours. If it increased to 10, I can work for 8 hours, and so on. So this is the different levels of employment at different wages rate. So this is rents, the area. This area represent the economic rents. So economic rents sum the area between the market clearing wage, which is W2, and the labor supply curve. This is the labor supply curve. This is the minimum wage that can be accepted, and this is the labor supply curve. This area is the economic rents. So in our lecture today, we have merged demand and supply together in order to find the market clearing wage, and then we studied what are the factors that affect, what's going to happen if one of the factors that affect demand and supply has changed, and then this equilibrium of other factors of non-market factors and its impact on the labor market, and finally the applications of the labor market. This is the end of our lecture today. Thank you, and see you next week.